Today in How to Loom Knit, we'll be working the seed stitch and how to prevent curling on your knits. We'll also be working 3 patterns in this video. This is lesson 6.1. Welcome to Good Knit Kisses. We're all about helping you stitch your love and love your stitches. Prevent knits from curling by combining knit stitches and purl stitches to create a seed stitch. This beautiful pattern is worked all over in the seed stitch by alternating knit and purl stitches, and then the next row shifting it over to create this unique look. You can see it in a large scale here on this nice cowl here that's just been sewn as a flat panel and then stitched together to make a big circle. This one has been worked back and forth to make a dishcloth. You can make a little coaster or even make them with this border in mind, just as we did when we worked our garter stitch border, so you can have the field of stockinette. You can see that in this dishcloth here. In this particular video, we're going to be showing 3 patterns this week. We're going to show how to do a all over stitch pattern in seed on a coaster, as well as a washcloth with a shortcut using E-wrap, and then also making this stockinette field just as we did on the garter stitch. To get the patterns and supplies, please click down in the links below for more information. Let's go over the looms and yarn you're going to need. For both dishcloths, you're going to need at least 36 pegs of a small gauge 3/8 loom. And for the yarn, you're going to need a cotton number 4 weight yarn. I can get about 2 dishcloths out of 1 ball of yarn. And this gray one back here, we're using the remaining yarn from our garter stitch dishcloth last week as well, called Reuse. For the coasters, you're going to need an acrylic yarn or wool in a super bulky number 6 weight yarn, and you need at least 12 pegs of a 5/8 gauge large gauge loom. All right, let's begin. The seed stitch has such a great nubby texture because it has the knits and purls where they alternate every other row, and you get this really cool texture here with a knit on top of a purl. In order to do this easily and remember as a beginner, I suggest working with a multiple of 2 and not an odd number. That's because when you knit and purl across the row, you end with a purl stitch, and then the next row, if you start with the knit stitch, it automatically puts it on top of a purl, and you get your automatic pattern there. If you work with an odd number, it's still okay. It just means that the second row is going to always start with a purl, and then you might get lost on, hey, which row or round am I on? So all 3 patterns and this video will concentrate on a multiple of 2. We'll do that on the all over pattern as well as on the border design. Let's begin with a cast on, and later I'm going to show you a bind off that matches. Here's a hot tip though, use an odd number of stitches for the seed stitch when you're working in the round so that you can continue going without stopping. Loom setup. Let's set up our looms for the dishcloth and coasters. If you're working with the all over pattern design where it's all over seed, just mark your first and last stitches. We're going to do 12 on the coaster and 36 on the dishcloth. If you're working with the border, you're going to need the first 4 and last 4 stitches marked for the border dishcloth. Go ahead and cast on your stitches. You're going to need 12 for the coaster and 36 for the dishcloth. I've used a chain cast on with my crochet hook. You can use whichever one you like. Be sure and click down in the link below for a reminder of those different cast ons. We're going to jump ahead, so go ahead and pause your video now and we will dive right into the main stitch pattern. We're going to work the first row on all the patterns as knit purl, knit purl. Now you can work with an E-wrap stitch or you can work with a U-knit stitch. This one right here is working with the U-knit stitch, as well as my little dishcloth over here with the border. I'm working with the U-knit stitch, and the sample back here, this one is the E-wrap stitch, and you can see that it's looser and it's going to be a little bit bigger. The dishcloth with the border ends up being about 8 inches, and this one ends up being about 9.5 inches, so you can see it gives it quite a bit more room and width. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to use our U-wrap knit here and knit our stitch, and then we're going to purl. So we're knitting 1 and we're purling 1. Okay, and it goes all the way across that same way. Our U-knit stitch and then purl. Okay, Now I'm going to teach you a trick for making the stitch easier for the E-wrap in just a moment. So go ahead and make your first row. And if you're going to use the E-wrap, just hold on one moment. I'll get to the end and I will show you the really quick way to do it. For the quick version of using the E-wrap, what you can do is go ahead and E-wrap one and then purl. And so you're not going to work that stitch there, okay? So we're just going to leave this one not knit over, and then we're going to E-wrap the next one and then purl. So you're just going to work your way across the row, only purling really. You're just wrapping one where the E-wrap would go and then purling one. Okay, so we're completing the purl stitch. Now, of course, the row will go really fast because you're not having to knit over. And what this does is it leaves a spot where you can clearly see where the E-wrap stitch is being placed. It's really a great little trick. And when we come back, you'll see why it's such a great trick. Okay, so my last stitch is purled, and that completes one row. Now, when we do a return row, we immediately E-wrap this stitch here, okay, and then we go to below to purl, except we need to knit over first and then purl. I find it helpful to keep my thumb in front, the yarn in front, knowing that I need to purl that stitch. And now we purl it and move on to the next. Go ahead and just E-wrap because it's ready for you to kind of prep that for the next row, and then knit over and purl, E-wrap, keep that yarn to the front, and knit over and purl. And you see how it's shifting our stitches where we had done a E-wrap before. It got purled right on top of itself. Here's the E-wrap ready for the next row, but we purled it right before that. This one we just purled, and now we're going to E-wrap this stitch that was previously purled and go down here. See how it looks like there's two E-wraps next to each other, but that is the row before. So once we knit that over, it pushes it downward, and now we're just adding new yarn on top to make that purl stitch. Okay, so you just keep going and you have got your complete pattern here. Now, in order to make the coaster, you're just going to continue working until you have 24 rows. Okay, so you have 24 rows, and then you will be ready to bind off in pattern, and we'll be showing you that very soon. Let me show you this one here. So if you want to count them, you can just count by twos by looking at how many purl stitches you have. So I have this knit stitch down below, and I know that that's a row 1, and then the purl stitch is a row 2, so I can just count and say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and then I know I'm ready. So we just look at this from the inside here, and you can pull back and count it, or you can look from the back and count it. Just know you're looking at the reverse of the stitches back here. Okay, so for the dishcloth that has it, what's interesting about this one is it lays really loose, especially on the E-wrap, and I can go ahead and measure what my width is. And once you know your width, like this is 9.5, and if you were working with a unit stitch and you got, say, 8, you can actually just use your measuring tape, pull it out, and see I've got this 9.5. So I can take my half here, come down here, put the 9.5 down at the bottom, and hold it up through to the back. And I just kind of slightly tug on it because, you know, sometimes it's not stretched out enough, and we can pull up from the back and know if we are at the right length or not. So you just continue knitting until you get about to that length. So I have notes in my pattern. I've used 64 rows in order to create this one, which if you're counting how many purl bumps you can get 32 as you count all the way up. And that's when you're ready to begin the bind off. Let's go ahead and talk about the border pattern. For making the border, all you're going to need to do is work just like you've done the all over pattern in only the first 6 rows. So you'll continue knitting one, purling one all the way across, back and forth until you have 6 of them. So you're just making this small little skinny section. It's almost an inch. It's about 3/4 of an inch long. You can make it longer if you like for another pattern, or like say a blanket or something, but that's all we need for this one. And then once you do that, you're only going to be working the first 4 and then the last 4 stitches with the seed stitch pattern. So all you're doing is knitting 1, just as you've done before, whether it's E-wrap or U-knit, and then purl 1, and then knit 1, and purl 1. And then as I'm stating in the pattern, you're going to knit across. That means knit all the stitches until you reach the last 4 stitches, and then again you knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. When you do your return row, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, it alternates and it shifts it over for you, and then you just make your middle stitches the same. So you'll continue working on that. So you're at almost an inch for the 6 rows for the first part of the border. Then you're going to knit the remaining length with the borders on each side and stockinette in the middle. And then when you come to the end, only knit 5 rows of the seed stitch to complete this border. This is about an 8 by 8 using the U-knit stitch. So we've got about 3/4 of an inch here. Then you're going to measure from the beginning all the way till here is about 7 1/4. And then we're going to work 5 more rows for the border. So work that, pause your video, and meet me when you come back. We'll work on binding off in pattern. See you in a moment. Once you've reached your desired length, then you're ready to bind off. On the coaster, this is about 4 inches because it's about 4 inches across. And on the larger dishcloth, it's about 9.5 inches. For the smaller one, which is U-knit, is about 7 inches or so. Okay, and then you'll follow the pattern. Now what we do is we're just going to be knitting and purling across in our bind off pattern. If you've never done that before, all you do is you just knit the first stitch, okay, and be sure and click down the link below for our basic bind off video, and then you purl the next stitch. Okay, so you're just working the first 2 stitches in the pattern that you've been doing before. Binding off in pattern creates the same pattern that you would have been doing had you made another row. But instead, we're just going to lift out that second stitch and put it onto our first stitch and lift up and over to knit over. Okay, we're just working the stitch. We're not technically knitting it. And then we're going to move that to our empty peg. It works in either direction. And then we're going to knit the next stitch here, and then move it on top of the previous stitch, and then lift up and over to work that, and then we're moving it to the next empty peg. Now here's where you can start to forget the pattern, and you're saying, okay, well, do I knit or do I purl? Well, when you're doing the E-wrap version, it's really easy because you can leave the old stitches on here and know that you just knit that one, so that's going to become a purl, but it's a little bit different when you're working with this one over here. So you can just look in the back and say, did I knit or did I purl last? Well, if you look in the back here, you can see this purl bump, which means this stitch was actually knit. If it's easier for you, you could just unknit each one of these knit stitches down the row just to remember, but that means that they get purled next. So this one right here, what I'm going to do is just go ahead and knit that back over, so I know that this one's going to be purled. So I put my yarn in front, and then I just purl that stitch, lift up and over, and you can put it directly on that first stitch there. Make sure that you don't pull your yarn too tight, okay? And lift up and move it over. The key here in binding off in pattern is you still want to maintain that the looseness here. You don't want to make it super tight. So we just continue working our pattern, knitting and purling across as you would. Okay? And when you get to your last stitch, I'll just remind you how to do that. So for the E-wrap version, make sure that you're not lifting up and over as you saw on the coaster, because you can easily lose track, especially with so many extra stitches, or say if you were using this pattern in a blanket or something. So go ahead and E-wrap this first stitch. So you're just going to wrap around, E-wrap that because we're working back in the other direction, and then lift up and over to knit off that last E-wrap stitch from the previous row, and now purl that stitch, and then pick it up and move it to the first one. Don't tighten too much. Lift up and over, and now move it to the empty peg. Make sure that you're not tightening too much. Okay, this one right here is going to be knit because it was purled last. So we're going to E-wrap that actually and knit over. If you do a U-wrap knit where you've done all these E-wraps before, it's going to make your bind off too small, and it's going to make your knit kind of pucker in at this end, and you want to maintain this looseness like you did at the cast on. All right, so you just continue working those stitches until the very end. I'll show you that last stitch to remind you, or you can click on the bind off video for more information. Okay, pause your video and I'll meet you back at the end of your bind off row. See you in a moment. We're on our last 2 stitches. Technically this is my last one. Gonna purl that, put it on the previous, knit it over, and then I'm going to go ahead and knit this one more time. And we're going to pull on through and cut it. And there we have our casted off row. And you can see that you have purl stitches implemented into the cast off. It's not bending forward or back, and it completes that look. So let's finish the last 2 on this E-wrap version. Okay, so I've got this last E-wrap to lift up and over. And now we're purling. And lift that, move it over to the first one, knit over, whoops, drop that stitch. There we go. Now knit over, and then we're going to E-wrap this one more time and lift up and over and remove that from the loom. Go ahead and clip off that yarn, pull it through, and now I've got this nice loose bind off here that matches as well, just like the coaster did, and it just gets it right up to the edge, and it's just such a nice finished detail, like you've been doing it professionally all these years. Now let's weave in our tails. When you work in the tails for seed stitch, it's the same as when you're working at the duplicate stitch for garter, where you're just following along the pattern, but it is a little bit harder to do. You really have to study your stitches. It's easier to show you on this larger scale sample, so let's just go ahead and start by using a tapestry needle, and we're going to work with our end. I'm on the bind off side right now, or cast off. We're going to go alongside these stitches on the end. Be sure and don't go back through that loop that you just created. I go down through the previous row where you see the purl bump sticking out. So we're just going to go right on through, okay? And then just turn your work and start examining the stitches. I pull it back and go right underneath that bump there. That's that very outside bump, okay? Just pull my stitch right on through, or my needle right on through. Okay, and now that's really locked in place. And now I want to follow the yarn. Okay, so I'm following this yarn that's previously down. We're going to see where it comes up. It actually comes below this purl bump here, so we're going to bring it down here. And I want to work my way inside. I don't want to just stick along the end here. So we're going to work our way over, and I'm going to find another loop that I can follow. So the yarn that's right here, I can kind of follow this around, and we're just going to follow where that goes. So I'm going to pull on this stitch, and I can see that it goes underneath right here. Okay, so it's going under this loop. So go down like this. Okay, and then now pull it back, and I can see that this loop that we just followed goes underneath this one and around here and then around here. So we're going to go under and around and under this one. Okay, so far so good. You can't see the yarn, and now we can follow it around a bit more, and it goes here and underneath this stitch here. Okay, and so you get the idea. You're just following the yarn around and where it travels. And sometimes it'll travel underneath. So this yarn here goes underneath this set of stitches here and then back down again. So we're going to go here. And then what happens on the other side, once I get this part in, let me just go down here. I'll show you. Let's flip it to the other side. There's actually now 2 purl bumps right here, but you can't see it because I've tried to put it underneath where this yarn is so it doesn't double up on the other side. That's all you do. You just continue going around. It takes a little bit of extra time, but it's worth the effort, going in different directions, and then you'll just trim it with your scissors and you are all done. Well, I hope you enjoyed making the seed stitch today. Be sure and check out all the patterns. Of course, the coaster is easy to do very quickly, but it's well worth it to make your own scrubbable dishcloth and one that's got the stockinette on it that makes a great face cloth too. Join me for our next lesson and learning about the rib stitch and how to prevent your knits from rolling. It's perfect for making hats and cuffs for sweaters. See you soon. Thanks for joining us today, where we help you stitch your love and love your stitches. See you again soon.